Good evening and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is 5:30 on Monday, August 28th, and we are convening for a customer public hearing where customers can voice their thoughts on in our current proceeding involving docket number 2023-9-E, and this is the docket concerning Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, Commissioner Caston, Chair Belser, and with us virtually we have Commissioner Irvin. With us we have Counsel for Duke Energy Carolinas and the Counsel for the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. Let me recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Sandra Moser, to give some brief instructions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Good evening. We would like to thank everyone for appearing today at this public hearing. This proceeding before the Commission in docket number 2023-9-E concerns Dominion Energy South Carolina, Inc.'s 2023 Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. Before we begin, we have a few preliminary matters to go over. The Commission is mandated by law to follow certain procedures. Only those who have signed up will be able to speak this evening. The Commission will not hear from you unless you are signed up to testify. If you are signed up to speak, you are testifying as a witness about facts known to you related to Dominion Energy. You will be placed under oath, and this means that what you are going to say is the truth known to you. Your statements must be under oath in order to be evidence in this case and considered by the commissioners. After you are called to speak and come up to the microphone, please give your name, the name of the street that you live on, and the town in which you reside. You do not need to provide your house number, but please also confirm while giving your statement that you are a customer of Dominion Energy South Carolina. Then you may proceed with whatever you wish to tell the Commission through your testimony. Please speak clearly so that everyone can hear you, including the court reporter. And after you are done speaking, please remain at the microphone for any clarifying questions that the parties or the commissioners might have for you. Everyone who has signed up to speak will be given the same time limit of 3 minutes. This is the second scheduled public hearing in this docket. The next public hearing will be tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. And please note that if you provide testimony during one hearing, you cannot provide testimony a second time or at another hearing. The trial in this matter began today, Monday, August 28th, 2023, and during the trial, the commissioners will hear the positions, testimony, and evidence from Dominion, the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, and all other parties intervening in this matter regarding Dominion's IRP. This hearing is generally a hearing in which various technical experts will testify. It will continue until all witnesses and final statements or motions have been presented by all of the parties. The hearing is expected to continue for at least 2, 3, or more days and will be available in real time virtually. Importantly, if you are signed up to speak, you are a witness testifying in this matter. The 7 commissioners before you are what is called a quasi-judicial body in South Carolina. This means that they are judges in the case. They are subject to the rules of judicial conduct and the laws passed by our General Assembly. And just like if you are a witness called in a trial at the county courthouse, you cannot ask questions of the judges and expect him or her to answer. The same applies here. So regardless of whether a commissioner wants to answer a question or clarify any matter of law, the commissioner simply cannot answer questions. They are bound by the same judicial rules as a judge. This is the public's opportunity to be heard and to say what you wish to the Commission concerning Dominion's IRP. If you have any information that you want to provide as evidence, please hand it up to the clerk and court reporter when you complete your testimony. We will need for you to remove or redact any personal identifying information that you do not wish to have shared. Finally, the attorneys and representatives who are here today will be able to provide you with information on how to contact Dominion or the Office of Regulatory Staff as needed. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Moser. Do we have our first public witness on the line?
Madam Chair, I believe we do. Testifying virtually, we have Hirak Pati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, sir. If you would please solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Will you please state your name, the name of your street and your town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Okay, I am located on South Red Avenue, and that's in North Charleston, South Carolina, and I am a Dominion ratepayer.
Thank you, sir. And please provide your name.
My name is Hirak. That's Hirak, and my last name is Patty, Pati.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Patty, you will have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin your testimony now.
All right. So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all the commissioners for the opportunity for us to have this public hearing today. I think today there will be some technical experts that will speak more to the overall IRP. Maybe able to speak to a higher level of expertise than myself. So I sort of want to take this opportunity to focus a little bit more in on the energy storage side of things. There's a company called Form Energy. They've actually been dealing with our next door neighbors here, Georgia Power. And recently, they have actually been working to build these 100-hour iron air batteries. And so they've been building it in places like Minnesota, New York, pretty much all across the country. And, it's still a technology that's they're still in development on it. But basically the idea is by using this iron air technology that these batteries can last up to 100 hours, because currently the batteries that are out there, they don't last quite as long. And that, of course, has affected the ability for renewables to be deployed, because obviously, as we all know, they are still intermittent. So the idea is that these batteries are going to continue to improve. They're also going to continue to reduce in cost. Also, recently, the Inflation Reduction Act passed in last year, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow for some more credits to go towards it. So that's going to make it even cheaper. So the idea is that you could see a cost curve declining as a result. And so I think that to speak to the IRP specifically, I think that I would like to see a bit more energy storage presented. I'm sort of referring to that figure 3, which is the preferred plan, the reference build plan, that I'd like to see a little bit more energy storage on there and a little bit earlier, because I believe the first mention of energy storage here is the build would be in 2029. And so I'd like to see that happen a little bit earlier. I am pleased to see that solar is a big part of this IRP. Obviously, I'd like to see more, but certainly I'm going to give a little bit of credit there. I do think that that's good to see that there's a role there for solar. The other thing I wanted to point out here is if you look at figure 3, there really isn't any, there's no mention of offshore wind. It's not in there. I think there was a mention in there that they may consider that in 2040. I'd like to see a little bit more of that considered, and maybe, thinking outside the box here, there may be some options there for some onshore wind as well as that becomes cheaper. In regards to the natural gas part of it, you're probably going to hear from a lot of witnesses, or have heard from witnesses, about natural gas and its negative impact on the environment. But I also want to point out is that I've spoken at previous hearings about, the rate hikes that occurred as a result of fuel cost increases due to natural gas. So unfortunately, it hasn't been quite as cheap as advertised before. So the idea that adding natural gas would necessarily be cheaper is something that I'm, a little more skeptical about, just given what we've been seeing over the last couple of years. So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of you for allowing me to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patty. Hold just a second. Let me see if there are any questions from the parties. No questions. Commissioners, any questions for this witness? Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belcher. Good evening, Mr. Patty. You mentioned the cost of batteries, or you mentioned you were focusing on the use of batteries and wanting to see them in Figure 3, perhaps a little bit earlier. But I think you did talk about the cost coming down, and I just wondered if you have any knowledge that would be helpful to us, because we understand that the cost actually went up this past year, and I just wondered if there's experience that you have that we could use on that
so
point.
There was definitely, I agree with that, what you just said. The cost did in fact increase over the past year, but from looking at some of the information from NREL or sorry, I'm trying to look at I'm trying to research this while you're talking here, but the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has some information about this, but they still expect, even with that temporary increase, they're still expecting for those costs to go down. So I'd be happy to provide, maybe some additional information in the comments if that would help the commission.
I just appreciate that you are corroborating what we're also being told about the cost of batteries going up. So that's helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
Anything further of this witness? Mr. Patty, I just want to thank you for your time and your testimony today. We certainly appreciate you sharing your time with us to provide your comments. Thank you, and
and thank you for the time.
Have a good evening.
Madam Chair, our next witness is Miriam Mitchell, appearing virtually. Miriam Mitchell, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Thank you, ma'am. If you would please solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
As far as I know, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Will you please provide your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Yeah, my name is Miriam Mitchell. I reside at on Trask Parkway in Seabrook, South Carolina, 29940. What else is it you need to know?
Are you a Dominion Energy customer?
Yes, I am. Have been forever.
Thank you, ma'am. You will have 3 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin now.
Thank you. First of all, because we're in the hurricane season, I do want to give a shout out to Dominion, their linemen, and the storm teams. I'm thinking about them, and I'm just hoping it's going to be a mild season, and I want them to know they're appreciated. I hope everybody comes out unharmed. First of all, I'd like to just tell you why I oppose resources that damage community health. First of all, natural gas prices are unpredictable, as evidenced by 17+% increase in bills this year alone. We need to choose a better plan. This impacts households, and especially people on fixed incomes, retirees. Also, mined fossil fuels continuously cause needless harm to our environment, the air, the land, the water, the climate, as well as disrupt communities. And these communities usually most impacted are lower income communities. My input and hope is that you'll invest more in clean energy. And along those same lines, but I only have 3 minutes to go into it, if Dominion, the PSC, the ARS are truly interested in the public, as in public service, why not support and service rooftop solar instead of opposing it? That's certainly a viable resource. I believe that until Dominion controls their lobbyists and prohibits them and executives and prohibits them from interacting with the legislative delegations, we're headed for another scan of Dominion expose. Those interactions did not serve the public's best interest well then, and I don't believe that they're going to serve us best in the future going forward. So I am limited to 3 minutes, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to discuss further. You're welcome to call me or email me. Thank you so much for hearing my testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Hold just a second and let me see if anybody has any questions for you. Nothing from the parties.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Just hold with me. I'm asking if anybody has any questions for you. Just a second.
Oh, okay.
Commissioners, any questions for this witness? Ms. Mitchell, there are no questions?
Yeah.
There are no questions. Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate you giving your time and your testimony this evening.
Thank you for hearing me.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Madam Chair, our next witness is Michael Kern, appearing virtually. Mr. Kern, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you, yes, sir. If you would solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm that, yes.
Thank you, sir. Please state your name, the name of your street and your town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer.
Okay. My name is Michael Kern. The street is Oak Point Landing Drive, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and I am a Dominion Energy customer.
Thank you very much, sir. You will have 3 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin your testimony now.
Okay. Thank you for hearing me. I am opposed to the current plan of Dominion. There's been too many rate increases, paying for failed nuclear projects, and I certainly do not want to be paying for anything that is going to be increasing the carbon output, such as propane, such as any other fossil fuels, and that's part of this plan. I think Dominion should have a forward-thinking plan that's planning for the future, and they should be looking at solar, wind, water, and geothermal instead of doing anything with fossil fuels. They also need to be using the rooftops of all their customers and using that space for solar. They need to be engaging their customers, they need to be working with their customers, and they need to be increasing the capacity of the transmission lines so that any household solar panels can go back into the network, into the grid, and use that space and use that energy. I disagree with this plan, and I think there's far, far better ways to be working to get the energy that we need. And I will use my time for any questions if anyone has it.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. Hold just a minute while I ask if there are any questions for you. Nothing from the parties. Commissioners, any questions for this witness? Mr. Kern, let me just ask you, do you have rooftop solar?
I couldn't hear that last part.
I was just asking if you have rooftop solar.
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your testimony tonight and the time that you've given us to provide it. Hope you have a good evening. There are no further questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Our next witness is Jenna Teves, appearing virtually. Jenna Teves, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Please pause for a moment so you can be sworn in, Ms. Teves. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Will you please provide the commission with your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Yeah. So my name is Jenna Tevis. My street is Edenwood Court. Town is Charleston, South Carolina, and I am a Dominion customer.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Tevis. Apologies for the pronunciation. You will now have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin your testimony now.
Thank you. Yeah, so as a Dominion customer and also a homeowner in the Low Country, I am concerned about both the short-term and the long-term costs of some of the elements of Dominion's plan. I appreciate the fact that they are adopting some renewable energy, but you know, my concerns are twofold pertaining to short-term costs. First, the cost of outfitting coal plants in the proposed postponement of the retirement of those plants to meet EPA regulations is going to be probably pretty high, and I'm concerned that as a Dominion customer, I will be part of the solution for bearing those costs. And I'd like my energy bill to be as manageable as possible. The second short-term cost problem that I'm seeing is around Dominion's investment in more natural gas facilities. The natural gas has been a reason for Dominion to raise prices multiple times on our energy, and I'm concerned that this is quite an expensive investment to make. The long-term costs that I'm concerned about have to do with being a homeowner in a coastal city where the burning of fossil fuels contributes to CO2 in the atmosphere and to rising sea levels, which threaten the value of my home and my community, right? And threaten to impose quite steep costs over time as we need to rebuild from major storms that are also driven by rising CO2 levels. And that is my testimony. So I do appreciate Dominion's attention to renewable resources, but I'd like to see more emphasis placed on those resources in this plan for cost reasons, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tevis. Please hold the line and let me see if there are any questions for you. Parties? Commissioners, any questions? Ms. Tevis, there are no questions in follow-up to your testimony. Thank you for your time and your testimony this evening, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, our next witness is appearing in person, Rob McHugh. Mr. McHugh, if you would please come forward and take a seat at the table. And Mr. McHugh, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Will you please state your name, the name of your street and town, but not your full address, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Rob McHugh, MCCUE, Grace Street, here in Columbia, South Carolina, and the unceded land of the Congaree. And I am a Dominion customer. Been
Thank you.
a native of South Carolina my whole life.
Thank you, sir. You'll have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin now.
Thank you. So I'm a member of the community, have been for a while. See, there's an Eagle Scout up there. Hello. And so grew up on the waterways, love the waterways here. Very concerned about natural gas and its effects on the lovely waterways that we have. We've got the Greenway coming through, the water, the Three Rivers, trails coming through. Columbia is really hanging its hat on that strongly. And I'm really concerned about the effects of natural gas going through our rural communities and those pipelines, and the upkeep, as has been the case in other parts of the country, seems to be negligible. So thank you for the chance to speak. Renewable energies like wind and solar need to be the future of power in South Carolina, as natural gas is unsustainable and the infrastructure for nuclear power is out of date. Already, we've seen past failures amount to present price hikes in power costs. The population of South Carolina is aging. More folks are moving to a fixed income every year As prices everywhere rise, retirees shouldn't have to choose between paying for power, food, or medicine. There are those depending on home-based medical equipment who need a stable grid. The stability of grids using renewables has been proven. In recent blackouts in Texas, the renewables kept power when natural gas lines froze. We must look to the most vulnerable populations and think how a strong, reliable, renewable energy grid will keep our places of worship, hospitals, nursing homes, schools, shelters, and prisons powered for whatever need arises. Some of these places are places I volunteered, prisons, nursing homes, and those folks, they don't really get a choice in how much more income's coming their way, and they have to make those hard choices. So it's in y'all's hands as to whether or not that continues. Please consider the word service and how you would want to best serve the most vulnerable of South Carolina. Act on their behalf, and let's go forward with a mindset of service over profits. Let the welfare of the people and the environment be the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. Hold just a second. Parties, any questions for this witness? Commissioners, questions for this witness? Mr. McHugh, thank you. You were very eloquent. Thank you.
Our next witness is Emma Abrams. Emma Abrams, can you hear me? Thank you, ma'am. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. If you would please provide the commission with your name, the name of your street and your town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer.
My name is Emma Abrams. I live on Mooring Drive in Charleston, South Carolina, and my household is a Dominion Energy customer.
Thank you, ma'am. You will have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin now.
Hello, my name is Emma Abrams, and my family is a customer of Dominion Energy in Charleston, South Carolina. I am currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in environmental and natural resource economics, but you don't need a degree in economics to understand that Dominion's resource plan is at best risky. We know that Dominion's rates have increased almost 18% for customers due to the erratic and increasing prices of fossil fuels like coal and gas. We also know that coal and gas plants are unreliable, and extreme temperatures, as we've seen power outages and extreme weather over the past couple of years across the country. The task of this Public Service Commission is to find reasonable and prudent plans to meet the energy demands of the people of this state. It is not reasonable to extend reliance of fossil fuels that are driving the climate change that will cost Charleston County billions of dollars in protection for our coastal communities and leave our houses at risk and uninsurable. It is not prudent to increase reliance on energy that is costlier and riskier than much cheaper renewable energy. And I hope that this commission will make the right decision and find a plan that does not rely on increasing gas usage and pushing back retirement dates for dirty emitting coal power plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Please hold the line and let me see if anyone has any questions for you. Parties? Commissioners? Ms. Abrams, there are no questions for you. I'd like to thank you for your testimony and the time you've given us this evening. We certainly appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Our next witness on the list is Roscoe Wilson, appearing in person.
We're a
Do we
bit
have Roscoe
ahead.
Wilson? No, we do not.
We're a bit ahead of schedule. We're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yes, you're right. Okay. We have Alec Coley. Alec Coley on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, sir. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir. Would you please provide the commission with your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Sure. My name is Alec Cooley. I'm a resident of Cottingham Drive in Mount Pleasant, and I am a customer of Dominion.
Thank you very much. You will have 3 minutes for your testimony, and you may begin now.
Great, thank you. My main points are focused on similar to the last person. I've looked at the plan that Dominion has submitted, and I think it is far too focused on fossil fuels. For my concerns are a number. Obviously, with climate change, we no longer have the luxury of wondering what might happen or how it might impact us. We can see right now the clear-cut impact it's having on us. We personally, we live just half a block from a tidal creek. We know we are exposed to storms coming in the future. So there's a very concrete risk to us that are caused by climate change. And we also know that there is a clear-cut cost to the city and the communities and on an infrastructure level. This what Charleston itself as a city is looking at their estimated $6 billion in preparedness costs to adapt and get ready for climate change. Those aren't abstract, and we can't treat them as abstract. Our planning going forward has to address those. The reason we're in the position we are now is because we have made short-sighted decisions up to this point. We've externalized those costs and pretended they didn't exist, and thought that we were going for the lowest cost option with fossil fuels. That's not true. We just simply shoved that cost on to future generations and increasingly onto ourselves. And we've reached an untenable position at this point where we can't be doing that going forward. So I strongly encourage you to push back against plans that would delay retiring coal plants. We need to be doing those faster, sooner than later. We need to not be doubling down on new investments into natural gases. We can make the argument that they're more reliable, but that's not automatically the case. We've seen examples in Texas several years ago, as well as here just 2 years ago when coal and natural gas capacity was not working out as it was supposed to. We also know that there are, going forward, as we fight this climate crisis, we know policy is going to have to increasingly discourage and put the efforts in place to discourage natural gas and other fossil fuels, whether it's a price on carbon or others, and making new investments now into technologies that have a high risk of incurring higher costs down the line is simply looking at putting more costs that we can easily anticipate now. We can see how these are going to translate into costs for ratepayers down the line. So I encourage the commission to tell Dominion to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that is much more looking at how to aggressively move towards renewables. We can't assume, we may need fossil fuels through the transition, but there has to be a transition. We can't pretend this is always going to be in the future. So I encourage putting more effort into how we can speed up that process now with this plan going forward. I'll stop there.
Mr. Cooley, thank you for your testimony. Hold the line just a minute and let me see if there are any questions for you. Commissioners? Mr. Cooley, there are no questions. I'd like to thank you for the time you've given us this evening and for your testimony, and I hope you have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Our next witness is Philip Lipton. Philip Lipton, can you hear me? Hello. Thank you, Mr. Lipton. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind speaking up just a bit, but we have you on. We have you mic'd up. If you would please solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Absolutely.
One moment. We are having a little difficulty hearing you.
Yes, that's correct.
Ah, perfect. All right. If you would please state your name, the name of your street and your town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer.
Sure. Yeah, Fort Johnson Road, and I am a Dominion Energy customer.
Thank you. And your name, please?
What's that?
Your name, please?
My name is Philip Lipton, like the tea.
Thank you, Mr. Lipton. You'll have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin your testimony now.
Great. So I just want to reemphasize, which I think I heard somebody mention in this little bit, just kind of moving away from fossil fuel usage and the short-sightedness of the plan to not include battery bank storage and some sort of renewable energy, and that being some sort of primary emphasis on the plan. Something I would really like to see as a customer. That would be my main concern. Actually, is just the lack of renewable emphasis in the plan, or I guess you could say it's a disregard of some sort. As we move into the future, also the proposed methane gas plant. It is an exciting idea. I like the idea of moving away from some of the current infrastructure, because there's just unfortunately a lot of problems with the don't like that it is another fossil fuel. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a great idea, but given the circumstances and coupled with the fact that there's not any sort of proposed battery bank storage and solar energy plans, so that South Carolina can leverage itself to be competitive as we move into the upcoming years. Again, I mean, to leverage itself to be in a good position to be able to compete with other states. We don't want to just keep doing things the way that we've been doing them. I understand that there's a lot of existing infrastructure and a lot of jobs on the line, and I'm assuming that that's part of the reason why renewable energy is not being considered. But I don't really know. But that's my assumption. But those are kind of my two most important things. I could go on a little further, but those would be my top two.
Thank you, Mr. Lipton. We appreciate your testimony this evening. Hold the line and let me see if there are any questions for you.
Okay.
Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Lipton, there are no questions for you. We certainly appreciate you giving your time and your testimony this evening, and I wish you a good evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks.
Madam Chair, our next witness is testifying virtually. Kyle Lassio, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Would you please provide the commission with your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
My name's Kyle Lacio. I live on Green Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Yes, I'm a Dominion customer.
Thank you, Mr. Lacio. You'll have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin your testimony now.
Okay, well, I think that the plan for Dominion going forward should involve shutting down coal plants, getting off of oil, and helping customers, both incentivizing and financially helping customers to produce their own power through solar and wind. And that, we've seen a lot of the consequences of continued use of fossil fuel and the unreliability, and that the future is not to continue to profit off of these power plants, but to transition to a more durable system where power is produced
throughout businesses, on top of roofs of businesses, homeowners, even apartment buildings, and that I would like to see that in the plan for us to be a competitive state. Dominion's inherited some of the mistakes of SCANA, and that, consumers should not continue to suffer from that greed. Is that, I guess it's about 3 minutes. I don't know.
You've got some more time if you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just as an example of what's happening, with the carbon emissions, is the Hawaii fire in Maui, and South Carolina has had a lot of rain, but we depend heavily on agriculture and trees. And if we continue to do coal and oil, it could be damaging to our tourism. It could be damaging to our agriculture. It could be damaging to our largest industry, which is pine trees. And so we got to consider, doing everything we can to protect the environment, but also to do what's best for Dominion customers. Dominion customers were promised this huge refund we never got, and the least Dominion could do is say, okay, well, we're not going to do it the old way. We're going to do net sharing, help, allow people to have financing for solar panels on the roof, and then reimbursements that are a fair deal. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I want to say. I think you get the general idea.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. Hold just a second and let me see if anyone has any questions for you.
Okay.
There are no hands raised to ask questions, and so you've done quite well with your testimony. I want to thank you for your testimony and for your time this evening, and wish you a good evening. Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, our next witness is Joyce Mason. Joyce Mason, can you hear me?
This is she, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. It'll be my position.
Thank you, ma'am. Will you please state your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
Joyce Mason, Cokesbury, Columbia, South Carolina.
Thank you, ma'am. And are you a Dominion Energy customer?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes for your testimony. You may begin your testimony now.
I would like to say that just coming off of COVID and also my own personal issue, having had surgery after COVID, this is really a detriment. This is a very serious problem for me. And I'm just opposed, quite frankly, until I can feel more comfortable with Dominion, particularly under the circumstances, the situation with the company. And that's it.
Ms. Mason, thank you for your testimony. Would you hold the line for just a second and let me see if anyone has any questions for you?
Okay.
Ms. Mason, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions. I want to thank you for taking the time tonight to present your testimony, and thank you for your testimony as well. And we wish you a good evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, our next witness is David Quick. David Quick, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, my name is David Quick. I live on Village Square. It's a street in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I am a Dominion customer, but for full disclosure, after Hurricane Ian blew down 3 trees in my yard, I was finally able to get rooftop solar on my roof and a battery. And I got to tell you, these little pieces of glass that you can put on your roof are amazing.
Mr. Quick, if you will pause for a moment, please, sir. If you'll pause, we need to affirm your testimony, please, if you have a moment. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I sure do.
Thank you, sir. I believe you provided your street and your town, and that you were at some point a Dominion Energy customer. You may begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to express my concern about Dominion Energy's proposed integrated resource plan. I hope you all share my concern about the extreme weather events of late, and this is just of late, massive Canadian wildfires, the Maui tragedies, which is just heartbreaking, the Vermont floods, the record heat all over the place, the heating water, and as I speak, down here in Charleston, we are preparing for a hurricane tide timed with an extreme high tide, so we're a little bit on edge. All these events are jacked up on human-caused global heating, and this brings me to our collective responsibility to ease these disasters, and specifically Dominion Energy's generally disappointing integrated resource plan. First, let me say I'm happy about proposed solar and battery storage proposals by Dominion. It's very modest. We need more, and we need it ASAP. We don't need it on the back end. We need it ASAP. Now to my disappointments. There should be no delays in retiring coal plants. These both impact ratepayers because we have to keep the coal plants up to date, and continues the issue with global heating. Next, natural gas, which is actually methane gas, an extreme greenhouse gas. The proposed joint project for a natural gas plant with Santee Cooper will be expensive, guaranteed. Other people have referred to the failed nuclear plant. This could potentially be the same, very expensive, and it impacts especially the less privileged ratepayers and our climate. Dominion already has extensive natural gas resources, enough already. On top of it, natural gas requires pipelines, which destroys our forest and always leak methane. Again, a potent greenhouse gas. The expenses for the plant and pipelines mean our utility monopoly is guaranteed to earn a profit off of it. This is perhaps the worst kind of corporate socialism. On top of that, natural gas infrastructure also typically is placed in communities of color and low income, and there is an environmental justice issue almost inevitably. We, Dominion customers, already have to cover rate increases of 18% since the pandemic, all to pay for rising fossil fuels, which are, manipulated by the industry. In South Carolina, we don't even benefit financially from producing natural gas, but we do have a bounty of sun and wind, and we should be banking on these Palmetto State resources and reaping the financial and environmental benefits of the new green economy. Send Dominion back to the drawing board, and for this IRL, we need to do better for our environment and for our rate customers. Thank you.
Mr. Quick, thank you very much for your testimony. Please hold the line. There are no questions for you. I'd like to thank you for your testimony and for the time that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of you for your time. Bye.
Bye.
Our next witness is appearing virtually, Susan Thompson. Susan Thompson, can you hear me?
I'm here.
Thank you. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Would you please state your name, the name of your street and town, but not your house number, and whether or not you are a Dominion Energy South Carolina customer?
My name is Susan Thompson. I live on Bayview Drive in Mount Pleasant. I am a Dominion customer.
Thank you, ma'am. You'll have 3 minutes to deliver your testimony. You may begin now.
I don't need 3 minutes. I just want to say that I don't think this is a good time for us and therefore Dominion to be investing in non-renewable energy sources such as coal and particularly natural gas. It shows to me that Dominion does not have our best interests at heart, where they would be going with solar and wind power and not trying to invest in new natural gas infrastructure. I think that's been a hidden agenda of theirs for a long time, and I think we ought to pay attention and not support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Let me see if there are any questions for you. Ms.
I'm
Thompson,
sorry?
I was just checking to see if any of the parties or commissioners had questions for you. They do not. I'd like to thank you for the time you've given us tonight and for your testimony, and wish you a good evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, at this point, we have attempted to contact everyone listed on tonight's registry. There were 2 names that were marked as in person who did not testify. With your permission, I'll read those out to see if they're in the room. Joanna Lagunez Auraz. Joanna Lagunez Auraz. And Roscoe Wilson. Roscoe Wilson in attendance? Madam Chair, that concludes tonight's pre-registrants.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the witnesses that appeared, either virtually or in person, to testify. We appreciate them taking time out of their schedules to come and testify today, either in this morning's session or this evening's session. Thank you to the parties for being here, and if there are no more witnesses to present testimony, we will close this proceeding, and we are resuming in the morning at 9:30 a.m. Thank you very much. This portion of the hearing is adjourned. Thank you.